Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about the Super 7 Ultimates Voltron. This is the cartoon version, the first version from like 2 years ago, and we're going to talk about this and discuss, is this a good figure? But mostly I'm excited about the new 3-0 Robo Dow Duo one that's coming in, and we're going to be looking at this again. But then we're going to take a look at this, do some comparisons, and discuss, what do you need a 7-inch figure for? Is it any good? Is it good? Is it great? Does it suck? We're going to talk about this. Super 7 Voltron coming up. So before we get into really looking at this figure, I do want to talk about Voltrons, specifically the license for Voltron gets passed around a lot. It seems like every 2 to 3 years, another company gets to take a stab at making a Voltron. It's been going on for a long time. You know, Toonami, Playmates, and all of them have taken a stab at it too. And here we are with Super 7 and theirs. Now, how can Super 7 be making this one at the same time that we have the 3-0 coming out? And that's because they're in different scales. And in fact, Blitzway is also a different scale. So those are all still being sold around the same time. And with that in mind, we did have issues back in the day when it comes to Vehicle Voltron, to where that one took so long to come out, they lost the license to it. So that's Metalworks or something like that. So getting into this one, though, it's all these different companies having different takes on Voltron. It's quite interesting. It's a little bit exciting, but it can also be overwhelming. I'm going to do a few comparisons to this, but when the 3-0 comes in, I'm going to do a ton of comparisons. The first thing I want to talk about is accessories. Now, I want to say it doesn't have much. Like, we're used to just a slew of accessories. I don't know what they put with this, but there we go with 2 extra heads and whatever. So with that, I don't, this one doesn't want to articulate at all. And then this one here, well, maybe these don't articulate like I thought. I thought there'd be some more articulation with them, but I'm guessing not. Yeah, there's articulation on these here, and so it would all be the same. It's just really, really tight. So I guess that's kind of good that it's tight, but you have to have it plugged in to actually move it, because it's not moving. These are not moving on their own. So, wow, that's tight. Maybe I don't want to mess with that. But they have open and closed mouths. And so so in the intro where you see the mouth open, roar, and then roar, well, this one is closed, this one is open. And I have it set up kind of an opposite one of each on each hand for a very specific reason. Because I think it's easier to just put the sword in and take it out in this kind of open and closed hand. And you still really get about the same position out of it. So not really a big deal. Now, getting the shield in there is a massive, massive challenge. And it's because there's not articulation in the jaw. Now, we're going to get into articulation on this guy, and there's not much to it. But you have to actually bend the mouth to get the shield in there. Which I guess after you've done it a couple times, it doesn't seem as bad as it does the first time. But wow, that's kind of strange. But it does hold it really well once it's in there. But it just feels wrong. And I know, I mean, I call it a shield, but some people call it something else. But anyhow, there's that. The sword looks pretty nice, but it seems to be, it might be painted, but it doesn't. I know the handle's painted, but this just looks like shiny plastic, but not much to it. Now, there's another version that they made, and I'll talk about that. So there's a chrome one that comes with 2 swords, a glow-in-the-dark, and a metallized shield. So you get some better accessories with that. This is the cartoon version, and so it's trying to match the cartoon and animation, all that kind of stuff. And then the shield itself, it's okay, but I mean, I got paint slop on mine, and so it's not the best paint application to it. It's okay. It's just not the best. But anyway, there's the accessories. Let's go ahead and take a look at this guy's articulation. And save time as we do articulation, we're also going to look at the sculpt. Now, I want to say with this one versus the other one, I think that it has a beautiful head sculpt. Absolutely amazing. It looks fantastic. And the paint apps are pretty good on it. Now, the chrome one, I actually like this head sculpt better than the chrome one, which I don't know if I should risk it. But I'm thinking if you could pop it off, if it's a ball joint in there somewhere, and you could pop it off and swap heads, I mean, I would rather have the chrome figure with this head sculpt, but or this head paint. It's the same head sculpt, it's just the paint's different. So you go up to about there, down to about here, which is actually quite good. And then, 360 and all that kind of stuff. Now the shoulder, it goes up and then down sort of like this, and then that's about it. So you can sort of get the sword wielding through this shoulder articulation that they have going on here. But it's not the greatest shoulder in the world. And I think because of the way they do that, that's why the shoulders kind of stick up sort of high on him. But in person, it doesn't look as bad as it does in photos. And I was kind of a hard pass on this at first because I thought the photos looked terrible. But anyway, you do have a bicep swivel all the way around, and mine's kind of loose there. And then you got less than a 90 in the elbow. And then we talked about this. This is really hard to turn these, but I guess after you get them on here and wiggle them a bit, they do turn. They do rotate, so in and out. That's pretty good there. So with the waist swivel, you have a waist swivel and you have the chest swivel. And it's another one of those things that this one actually sort of holds. But was it really that necessary? I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it helps. But to put articulation there, but we don't get it in some other places, that doesn't make sense. So we get down here to the legs, and you go about this far forward, this far back, and there's no thigh swivel, but they do put it in the second version, the chrome version, and I'll probably have it in the black version that's coming. So probably have it in that black version. You got the knee to just an exact 90, and then the foot going down and up, and that's it. Slight ankle rocker. So if you're wanting this for articulation, this is definitely not going to be, it's not going to cut it for you if you want high level articulation. But if you want a 7-inch one that just kind of stands around the shelf next to something like this, which we'll talk about in a bit, then I guess it'll work for you. All right, continuing looking at his paint apps, I really think a nice paint apps on the chest. And this is all kind of flat. There's a little bit of sheen to the black that's going on in there. Not much with the reds and all this other kind of stuff going on. And then great paint right here. It's not, well, a little bit sloppy on the belt buckle on the inside there, but not too bad. I mean, but at the end of the day, so any of like the paint slop on this, which I'm not trying to be an apologist at all about this, but from a distance, you don't notice any of it. So, I mean, especially with the 7-inch, like we're zooming in on it so we can kind of see some of that paint slop in there. The chrome version also has numbers on all of the lions, and you can't really separate lions at all on this. It's just an action figure, 7-inch action figure for 50. This one was 50. The chrome one came out 55, and we're looking at 55 for the black and gold one that's coming soon. So overall, he actually looks very much like you would expect a Voltron from the cartoon, but lacking articulation. I'm going to get into some comparisons, and I want to say that I didn't have a 7-inch Voltron to go with. This cheap Tuesday Morning is a store that had these for either $6.99 or $7.99 or whatever. And actually, this is the one I got for my son. The one I have is still in the package, so he's actually not going to stand next to one of these. But it is almost a perfect height match for these. And to say this was 7 and this was 55 or 50, that's kind of a big difference, and they look pretty close to the same. This does look a little more sophisticated in its design than this one, but still, it's just an action figure versus this thing here can actually still kind of come apart a little bit. I'm not really going to mess with it too much, but this still kind of comes apart a bit, and you can do more stuff with it when it comes to that, but it still is nothing like an original one from back in the day. So those scale together well, work together well, and look very good. Let's see the next comparison. The next comparison I want to use is Groon. Now, the reason is because this is a Super 7 Ultimates figure, and this is supposed to be Ultimates too, although nothing really says Ultimates about it. It is considered an Ultimates, I guess. Groon has significantly more articulation, and some of this was probably copied still from the Mattel design, but I think this is when they sort of branched out and did their own stuff. But you have thigh swivel, you have, well, the knee's not really that much, but you have more going on in this whole shoulder with what's going on over here. So you have a little more articulation, even though this one does not. I mean, this one really, you don't get hardly any leg articulation out of him, and you get it with this. So it's kind of like they're lowering their level of articulation from what they normally do with their 7-inch Ultimates figures when they made this guy, which is a bit disappointing in a way. But at the end of the day, it still looks pretty good. Actually, it looks better in hand than I thought it would. But the articulation, even though I'm not an articulation junkie, it's still so low, it bothers me. All right, so when I think of this figure, it really reminds me of this Blue Lobster Autobot Spike figure that is really a PVC figure, which this is feels like a PVC figure. Maybe it is a little bit better plastic than what's going on with this guy over here. But they look the same. Don't they look about the same? So this guy looks like he walked out of the cartoon, and it's pretty cool in the fact that you've got an Autobot Spike, and it already exists, and you might be waiting another year or two for the X-Transbots one, but they do kind of feel like they're cut from the same mold, or coming from the same world, in a way, and this looks like it walked out of the cartoon, and that sort of looks like it kind of walked out of the cartoon. I mean, it's not perfect on-screen representation, but it's good enough, and it just kind of reminds me of it. Okay, so we're going to compare them to the original Matchbox version here, and one of the things I want to point out is, I don't have the Chrome one, but the Chrome one might look closer to this aesthetically. Obviously, we're not checking the size class. They're not going to match up size-wise and all that kind of stuff. But aesthetically-wise, I still think it's more interesting looking at the original than looking at this one. But of course, the original one, the vac metal, all that kind of stuff, that's fantastic. And then this guy over here, of course, is going for more of a cartoon look. I don't know if it nails it as well, but it still does kind of hide away some of the legs because the legs aren't exposed, and some things like that actually are a bit of a cartoon aesthetic improvement, but you really can't beat the original. It just seems really hard to beat the original. Trendmasters try to beat the original, but I want to tell you that every time one of these companies comes out with a Voltron, and it's this scale, this 10-inch scale, 11-inch scale, and it doesn't have chrome on it, it just feels like a waste. It feels like a miss. But this one has sort of the muted kind of colors versus this one here, which sort of goes for the same thing. So I'm kind of thinking they were trying to hit the cartoon look with this one, Trendmasters. Like, well, we're trying to hit the cartoon, they're actually just trying to be cheap. But that's the Trendmasters version. And we got the SOC version. Now we are really, with this one, we're super jumping price class and all of that kind of stuff going into SOC. And I do want to point out that it's not back metalized and shiny. It is kind of muted silvers in here instead of chrome. They do have chrome and accents in other places. So this one sort of has some of the cartoon elements and some of the real world with it. But with that, this is kind of, will the 3-0 be better than this? Beat this aesthetically? That's something I'm looking forward to. I'm getting excited for. But just comparing these two side by side, there are more similarities between these than I realized. Aside from, of course, the fact that this one sort of does hide away the legs that we see here, and that because it doesn't include it on this, because it just tries to make it look like a Voltron and an action figure, this is a full transforming one, so it does sort of have all those legs in there. But it's got some muted colors to it, lack of vac metalized chrome, which surprised me actually when it came out. And there's a leg upgrade for it and all that kind of stuff, but they match more than I thought they would. Okay, so the next conversation I really want to have about this figure is Super 7 has the license to make 7-inch action figures. This is a 7-inch action figure of Voltron. Why are they not making the pilots? Why are they not making the pilots and a whole action figure line? Why not? You know, if they made the pilots, or at least the 5, and then we could get the Sven in there and all that kind of stuff, you could sell those. They would sell very well. And people really want that. So why are they not doing it? Why are they not making them in the 7-inch scale, the Ultimate scale, $55 a piece? In some cases, they could almost reuse some bodies on these. So there could be some reuse to it. But they're not for some reason. So with that, it's pretty frustrating and a little bit irritating that they wouldn't do that. But they just keep making this Voltron in 3 different colors, adding a little bit of articulation as they go, and more accessories. Why not give us the pilots? It would make a lot of sense. I'd be on board for it. I'd be excited for that, because we haven't really seen 7-inch scale pilots, but they don't do it. Or maybe they will down the road, or maybe they're losing the license soon, because you only get it for 2 or 3 years. You don't get to have a Voltron license for a decade. So, at the end of the day, what do I think about this Voltron? This Super 7 Ultimates Voltron, that's 7-inch, sort of posable, but does not transform, non-transforming figure. For $55. Well, it originally came out at $50. A secondary market's probably like $70 or something right now. I think it's not horrible, it's not great, It's a little bit below good. It's sort of okay. I think that it looks actually way better in person than I thought it would. It looks better than I saw the pictures. I didn't think it looked good in the pictures at all. The posability is actually a little bit lower than I expected out of this figure, but I'm not a super hyper articulation junkie myself, but it's still kind of bothering me that you can't really do much more with it than what I got going on right here. And so with that, I think it's something that's going to fill a 7-inch scale, which if you want that or you need that, then it works. But for the price point, I don't think it's bad for the price point. I just wish they'd give us some pilots. I wish they'd do a little bit more with the license than what they're doing. It just seems a little odd that they'd pay for a license and not do much with it. So I'm curious what you think in the comments below. Have you picked one of these up? I mean, it is 2 years old or older than that. Are you planning to get the black and gold one coming up pretty soon in a month or two? Because I probably will be taking a look at that one also. And are you getting this 3.0? Because it'll be showing up pretty soon. I'll be doing a review on the 3.0 one, and that's pretty exciting. But let me know in the comments below, like and subscribe. Ted Your Hanger out.
Voltron dares to come and threaten me, will make no mistake. He will fail.
And upon all the people of Eris who had worked together hand in hand, helping Voltron to achieve this glorious day of peace.